Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of NFA Live. Today is a great day to do our little camaraderie because the market is doing quite well. I am joined as ever, Ben and Guy. Gentlemen, welcome back for the 120th episode or something?
Something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Neither have I. All I know is that when we started this, the market was in a horrible situation, a horrible place. And the people that endure, like the people that are watching this video, are the ones that actually are the winners. So congratulations, everybody, for making it here. Today is a great day. And of course, if you're looking for Guy and Ben stuff, I don't know why you wouldn't be subscribed to them, but I linked them in the description. And you can find, of course, Guy's channel over at Coin Bureau, and then, hey, look at that. More Coin Bureau. You guys already have 202,000 subscribers. That's pretty good. And then we had Aaron and Coin Bureau Trading, 84,000. Coin Bureau Espanol, one of my favorites. And then Coin Bureau, I think, was that in Mandarin?
Yeah.
I knew it.
Future trends.
Future Trends, very nice. And then, of course, Ben on his channel, which I got it. Ben, are you almost at I think Ben's almost at 1 million. So
no, almost 900,000.
We can do that today. So if you guys would just subscribe to Ben's channel, maybe we can get this going. Also, as a little way of me saying thank you to everybody, if you want to go to the Bitcoin conference, I'm giving away a couple of tickets. All you got to do is there's a link in the description. You go to this X post and just fill out this form. Now, there's two things. Well, there's three things. First of all, thanks to iTRUST for making that possible. And two things is this: if you're not going to go, don't get the tickets because they're non-transferable. Just fill out the form. I'm going to draw them tomorrow. So go ahead and do that if you want to come to the Bitcoin conference here and actually would like to go to Las Vegas. But let's get down into it. And let's talk about some things. First of all, the market is pumping. Everybody's happy about that. When we hit 100K, if we do 100K, can someone notify us? Because I'm not going to be checking the price. But there's a couple questions we have today. And Guy, I want to start with you. Because the whole thing about Bitcoin, it kind of confuses me. Because we've had two states here in the United States accept the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, New Hampshire and Arizona. It doesn't state here, but New Hampshire stated that treasurers may place up to 5% of total funds in a Bitcoin or any asset with a $500 billion market cap, which is only Bitcoin right now. And the law takes effect in 60 days. And Arizona, even though it doesn't state it here, they actually passed it after the Arizona governor, Katie Hobbs, vetoed the original first bill. But she signed this one, HB 2749, that funds a Bitcoin reserve using unclaimed crypto airdrops and staking rewards. So make sure you hold on to those, or Arizona's going to snatch those up and put them into the reserve. So there are many more states to come. I don't know how the heck my state of Texas lost out to New Hampshire, but here we are. But with the momentum that Bitcoin's having, my question is, why has the price not exploded past 100K? And I made these questions last night. So if we could do 100K or 110K today, great. And where can Bitcoin dominance go between the states, the sovereign wealth funds, and now corporations battling it out to see which one could be the next MicroStrategy? As Fidelity was actually pushing all the corporations and institutions to get into Bitcoin at the MicroStrategy or strategy conference. So the question then is, why haven't we gone higher? And where is Bitcoin dominance going? Guy, what do you got?
Okay, I guess to start with, probably all these announcements around US states, looking to accumulate these strategic reserves, et cetera, are great to hear. It's good. It's objectively good news. I don't think it really translates into any buying at the moment. Certainly not by the states themselves. And I wouldn't, the charts would suggest not really by anyone else. It seems like the only big marginal buyers at the moment are the ETFs and MicroStrategy, Strategy, Michael Saylor. So, and I think what's important to remember about them is that those big buys, those buys that MicroStrategy and the ETFs are doing, are probably being done OTC. So the effects of them aren't being felt in the markets. They're not going out and market buying them, so to speak. So I think that's probably had an effect, or not really. Although the buying has been going on, it's been sort of fairly limited to these two sort of big entities, ETFs, and Michael Saylor. And I think there's a general sense of kind of wait and see, like how, okay, Arizona is inching closer to this. That's great. Are they buying anything yet? No, it doesn't seem so. That said, everything is trending in the right direction, including, I should add, the price as well. I mean, here we are at 100K. We're not an awful long way off Bitcoin's all-time high. And I think maybe, that probably explains the sentiment as well, because I think general sentiment around crypto is low, because probably most people are pretty heavy in alts and don't really have enough Bitcoin, or don't feel like they have enough Bitcoin. So although things are trending in the right direction, I don't think we've seen this sort of breakout yet. I don't think we've seen, FOMO really start to whip up. And I don't think we will see that until we start to see more sort of Saylor-esque, if you like, announcements from the likes of, say, the state of Arizona. The state of Arizona has just bought its first 100 BTC, whatever. That's this. I think moments like that are probably what will trigger real excitement in the market. But it has to be said, and I imagine Ben would agree with me on this one. It has to be said, Bitcoin really is doing pretty well. It's everything else that's struggling at the moment.
That's the truth. Well said. That's the big thing about altcoins, right? I think there's a lot of people probably in the comment section right now going, when are my alts going to pump? Because I didn't really get into Bitcoin too much. So Ben, same question for you. And then if you could alleviate some of the information as far as dominance goes. I know you just put out a video recently. So where does dominance go with all these things going on? What's the highest you could see it go for this cycle?
That's a good question. So we saw Bitcoin drop right in Q1 and sort of into early April. And I think we were likely going to get, whether it's a rally to new all-time highs or a counter-trend rally, I think we were going to get that in Q2 or Q3 anyways. Just because when you have that much selling for that long, usually there's at least some type of mean reversion. But if you think about it, Bitcoin just rallied from 74K to 99K. So it's not like the price hasn't been going up. Just starting from a pretty low level after the sell-off earlier this year. I do agree. I think sentiment's really bad because I think a lot of people have not really been into Bitcoin. They've mostly been into altcoins. Bitcoin, if you think about it, Bitcoin's only like 10K below its all-time high, When you think about it like that, it is interesting how there's very low retail interest right now. Like social interest is really, really low. But again, I think social interest is really low because most people watching, unfortunately, just don't really care that much about Bitcoin. They care more about the altcoin market. And that's why, the social interest in crypto is just so low right now. So I think Guy's right about that. I mean, I think that people just are more interested in that. I would say for Bitcoin dominance, you asked.
That's right.
I do think it will go higher. Primarily, there's two reasons, right? Two reasons. First of all, I think that if you look at, actually, could you go to the risk chart, Rob? Is this the risk chart?
No, this is the Bitcoin dominance. But yeah, sure.
Go to the risk chart. No, not that. No, you're gonna have to go to charts.
I
know. And the one that's not color coded, historical risk levels. And then if you go to Bitcoin dominance, choose Bitcoin dominance on that chart.
Where's dominance?
It's right there under Bitcoin.
Got
right
it.
there. So it's getting pretty high, right? The risk on Bitcoin dominance is getting pretty high, but I think there's probably a little bit more left in it, mainly because two reasons. First of all, altcoins, while they have gone down, they've gone down to 0.34 now. I still think in the short term, they're likely going to hit 0.32. I do think eventually they will hit all Bitcoin pairs. I think eventually they will hit 0.25, which means that Bitcoin dominance is likely going to go up. The only way that Bitcoin dominance wouldn't go up beyond this point, assuming that all Bitcoin pairs go to the range lows, is if ETH Bitcoin bounces, which I could see happening, right? with that said, I still think that Bitcoin dominance will likely hit 66%. Could it go higher than that? Absolutely. I mean, if all Bitcoin pairs really do go to 0.25, that's like another 20-something% drop of alts against Bitcoin. So yeah, like it's certainly possible that dominance could go higher than 66%, but I do think that around that 66-67% level, it would make sense. Like around these levels, it probably would make sense to expect some type of a pullback. Last year, we saw Bitcoin dominance kind of like find a local top in June, and then another one in early November. So I'm kind of expecting something similar to play out, right? I think dominance might go a little bit higher in the short term, and then kind of cool off for a while, and then maybe go higher again a few months later. But those are my current thoughts about Bitcoin. I mean, I think it will continue to outperform the altcoin market. And also the other reason is just monetary policy, right? I think that the Fed funds rate is still higher than the neutral rate, R star. And I think that QT is going to continue going on for at least the short term. So for those reasons, I think dominance will eventually go higher.
Yeah, it's gonna burn for some people who went heavy into alts, but that's why we say to diversify. And of course, if you haven't done that, I mean, it's up to you. We can't. I mean, the whole show is named around not financial advice, but I got to tell you, it's one of those things where you look at Bitcoin and go, maybe it's at a bad time. And this is all what you believe. If you believe that we're going to top out at 110,000, sure. But if you think it's going to go to 125 or 250 or like Sailor 10 million, well, then it's up to you. So that'll take care of the first question. Excellently answered. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. And the second one is this. Since November 2021, only 4, gosh, has it been that much? That little? Let me bring this up. Only 4 of the top 50 by market cap have regained their all-time highs. And that would be Bitcoin, BNB, Solana, and Tron. And we talked about why Tron did that and why it's so heavily involved into stablecoins. So the question that I have is, how different is this cycle for alts? And what are your expectations for the old alts versus the new cycle alts? Meaning, like there's some darlings of the past cycle, which would be like the Solanas and stuff like that. But going into this new one, where do you think things are going to go? And then follow-up question, should people just, actually, I'll ask that question later. So Ben, since you were talking, and I know you got something coming up, so let's just add this in. What do you think? Well, you're muted, but I appreciate you muting. That's very nice of you.
Sorry, I was just sharing my favorite low market cap gems. But
Fartcoin is on the table. I saw it.
Yeah. So I think really, I mean, I actually think, I know a lot of people, it feels like this cycle is different. And for the timing of things, it certainly is. But the process is the same, right? Like the process of alt bleeding against Bitcoin is the same as last cycle. It's just the amount of time it's taking to get down here is just taking far longer, right? It's just taking a lot longer. So, we're right here right now, right? We're right there right now, 0.35. I think 0.25 is the eventual outcome for alt Bitcoin pairs. I mean, we've been there 2 cycles in a row, right? The 2016, 2017 cycle, and then the 2019, 2020 cycle. It just seems like it's probably going to happen at some point. But one of my favorite charts is actually this chart. It's the advanced decline index of the top 100 cryptocurrencies. So you'll notice that when this is trending down, it means that if this is trending down while the entire asset class is trending up, it means that only a few cryptocurrencies are responsible for the bull market, right? Because this is trending down, it suggests that a lot more cryptocurrencies in the top 100 are actually trending down, not up. A lot of people joined crypto in 2020. And you guys remember back then when, every altcoin was going up, right? Basically. Yeah. And if you look at the advanced decline index in 2020 and throughout most of 2021, the advanced decline index was going up, meaning, right, you could just take 1,000 sticky notes on a board and throw a dart at one of them with a different altcoin name on it. And there was a good chance that altcoin would go up over the next few months because of all the money printing. But this cycle, we haven't seen that, right? We've seen the advanced decline index just drop, meaning, again, that most alts are actually doing worse and they're going down rather than up. This same thing happened last cycle, right? It happened last cycle. The only difference is that last cycle, the trend changed at the end of the pre-halving year. This time, it's still going on. Now, I contend the reason it's still going on, again, is mainly due to monetary policy and just the fact that QT continues, right? We just got the FOMC, the announcement yesterday. Quantitative tightening continues. Hopefully it ends soon, but it hasn't ended yet. Because of that, the higher risk assets bleed to the lower risk assets. And also, again, as I said earlier, I think the Fed funds rate is higher than the neutral rate. So when you have sort of macro conditions like that, it just means that your lower risk assets within each asset class are going to do better than the higher risk assets, right? It's why Bitcoin is doing better than altcoins. It's why gold is doing better than precious metals. And it's why, high market cap tech stocks are significantly outperforming all the, the Russell 2000 and all the low cap stuff, is because people want to invest in something they believe in long term, right? And a lot of people believe in Bitcoin long term. They believe in gold long term, and they believe in companies like Apple and Nvidia and Microsoft long term. A lot of people don't believe in a lot of the micro caps in the Russell 2000 long term, just like they don't believe in a lot of the altcoins long term. And so I just think in order to get that type of environment that you had in 2020 to 2021, you need to see that pivot, a strong pivot in monetary policy. Again, I think the same thing is playing out, especially if you just look at all Bitcoin pairs, right? It looks like the same thing's playing out. It's just we're all going, our hair is turning gray because we're just waiting for how long could this process possibly take to actually play out, and it's just taking a lot longer than last cycle. So those are my thoughts on it. That's why I feel it feels like it's different. Through the lens of timing, it is, but through the lens of monetary policy, it's the same.
Yeah, got it. Well said. Hey, and there's two things. First of all, when I was watching you do that, I had not seen that on your site. And I was like, I got to take a look at that. And this advanced decline index. And when I was looking at my chart and your chart, I was like, hey, what the heck is going on? But because it's like going sideways. But up here for the coins used, I had it on top 10. So I'm like, okay, I got it. And then you go to top 25, a bit lower, and then you were in the top 100. So obviously down here. But there should be something to be said for like friends of mine like Bobby, who is a degenerate gambler. And we have to speak to those people's souls who are gamblers themselves, who'd like to get into altcoins, because there is opportunity, but it's very limited. And that's why I've got Guy here to help me out with that. Guy, same exact question. And because for you and your channels, I mean, you guys break it down. And there's a lot of different things that I've never even heard of. This is on your Coin Bureau Club, but also on the channel. So break that same question down and then talk to us about just altcoins that are out there and which ones, are doing good and where you think things are going.
Yeah. First of all, I wholeheartedly agree with what Ben was saying there. And I think it's very interesting that thought that you expressed, Ben, about this idea of people not really believing in altcoins in the same way that they believe in Bitcoin or, in gold or whatever it is. And I thought it made me think, like, I'd be interested to see that advanced decline index. I don't know if you can do it, but it would be interesting to see like the S&P 500 x the Magnificent Seven, because I think it kind of reminds me, Bitcoin dominance sort of reminds me a bit of that in a way. It's or vice versa. We've got this sort of prized asset that's kind of propping up the rest of the market, and everything else is struggling. So I don't know, maybe we can come back to that in a bit. But I think to add to what you were saying about sort of altcoins in general, this idea of, I think probably for one thing, we need to get rid of the word alt season from our vocabulary, because I just don't think it really exists in the same form that it used to. Okay, we will probably at some point get a decline in Bitcoin dominance and a rotation of capital from Bitcoin into altcoins. I think that probably will happen to some extent. But in days gone by, in previous cycles, that as again you hinted at, Ben, that translated into across the board gains for pretty much any alt. As you say, you could throw a dart at the wall and whatever you hit, chances are it would go up. And the market has fundamentally changed. The structure of the market has changed so much since then. And I think a couple of things that spring to mind are, firstly, obviously we've talked about the ETFs ad nauseum in the past, but it's interesting as well that there are more kind of Bitcoin focused products out there that now give regular investors, or any investor really, access to BTC, but with potentially higher returns. So you've got things like options, Bitcoin options, ETF options. You've got things like MicroStrategy. There are all these different products now that are giving people Bitcoin exposure. And obviously, if you're getting exposure to Bitcoin that way and you make a profit, and you do well out of it, that money is much more siloed. That's not in the crypto market, so to speak. So there's a much lower chance of it finding its way into altcoins. Then if you look at the altcoin landscape itself, yes, I think people are, and there is this sense that people have less conviction when it comes to alts. And kind of, we've done that to ourselves in a way, as a market, as an industry, we've done that to ourselves, because there are new coins coming out all the time. There are new cryptocurrencies coming out day in, day out, all promising to do different things, but essentially the same thing that there are already 101 others that already does it. And it's so difficult to keep up with, all these new projects that all have, big sort of VC backing to start with. I know not all of them, but a lot of them. Then if you throw in, look at what happened with Mantra and Movement recently. Two projects that people were very excited about. And guess what? Shitty market makers in the background, siphoning off. And who pays the price for that? Retail, everyday buyers, like you and me, Rob. So I'm not saying Ben and that, because Ben hasn't been buying alts. But yeah, so, people, I think there's a real sort of sense of exhaustion, people looking at the altcoin landscape and being like, well, what do I get into here? And if they know a lot about it, if they don't know a lot about it, they can't see the wood for the trees. And if they do know a lot about it, they're like, that's a scam, that's probably a scam. There's 1,001 of those L1s already. This one seems to be run by a guy who wears a bear's head in public. I don't know what the hell that is. It's just... So I think you combine that with what Ben says and about people having generally less conviction in these anyway, and then this really strong product, this really strong coin, Bitcoin at the top of it, that more and more people want exposure to. It's just making it harder and harder. So I think if you're an altcoin investor this cycle, I think there are gains to be made. There are definitely still exciting projects out there that are genuinely trying to do good things, and you've just got to hope that there aren't shady market makers behind them. But spotting those is going to take time and attention. It's not going to be that one. It's not going to be pin the tail on the donkey anymore. It's you're going to have to really pay attention. And I think, as I've said many times before, I think the pumps that we do get when we do see a particular coin or narrative or whatever, or niche or whatever it is, pump, I think you're going to have to be fast, because I don't see it lasting. I don't see sort of up only for days, weeks, months at a time. And as I point out to a few people in our Discord and elsewhere, and anyone who'll listen, really, it's like if you look at the top gainers and losers on CoinGecko, say, on a given day, today's top gainer is very likely to be tomorrow's top loser. That's how quick it is. So yeah, it's about really paying attention. And you can't expect these things. You can't expect these things to just keep going on forever. All right, Agent Ted. I could be wrong, but Agent Ted could well be tomorrow's top loser.
I don't know. I'm going to have to disagree, because I think Titcoin it's all about the utility. And if you have something like that at 50% gains, it really comes down to the community, the tokenomics, development and of course more utility. So I can say, and MogCoin. I mean, I don't know about that one, but maybe what Guy's saying is a little bit true. So everybody, just to inject a little bit of altcoin happiness into you, I will say this: what Guy said really rings true, which is you have to really focus. You really have to do some research. You really have to buckle down. There's a lot of you in the comments section which have faith in your altcoins, and I'm with you. Trust me, I'm with you. I had a boatload of them. And if you just want to look at, like, I think one of the big things is just take a look at stable coins, right? And I've talked about this ad nauseum. USDC Tether, that's 91, 92% of entire market cap for all stable coins US backed, which is most of them anyhow. But just take a look at which chains they're built on. You know, Unichain, ZK Sync, Optimism, Polkadot, Tron. We just did a video about that a week ago, why Tron has actually surpassed Ethereum for stablecoin transactions and why it actually does that. Near Protocol, Hedera, Aptos, Algorand, Stellar, Sui, CELO, Avalanche, Arbitrum, Polygon, Base, and Solana. That's a lot of things. So just do your research right there and kind of move in that direction. I will say this: Bitcoin's market cap is, almost 2 trillion. And the next closest one is Ethereum at 237 billion. For stablecoins, their entire market cap exceeds Ethereum at 245 billion. So when I take a look at that, I think to myself, okay, if everybody's in the stable coins, why are they in stable coins? I think that's some have to play as far as like institutions saying, I don't want to go to fiat. I want to stick myself into stable coins and then get in at some point to have dry powder, because it's a hell of a lot easier to use stable coins to get into Bitcoin or get into your favorite altcoin as opposed to putting that into cash. So when I see stuff like this, I still think that there's going to be a run of altcoins. I just don't know exactly which ones, but I think it will happen. And I could be wrong. So that concludes that question. Sorry, I went a little bit heavy on that one. And this last one here, because we were going to talk about Trump's announcement, but it looks like it's going to be, there was a Trump announcement yesterday. Looks like it was broke by New York Times. It's going to be the UK as far as a trade agreement. Guy, take your victory lap. I can see it. I can see it in your eye. But I wanted to go over, like we talk about all the things that we should do and things that we should get into and investments. But there was this image, and I can't get out of my head, about what we're doing here and why we're doing it. And the question I have is for this is how can, if we never sell our Bitcoin, we just accumulate forever. How can people use their Bitcoin in the future? And what do you see them being able to do with it as opposed to just putting it in their ledger, putting it on their pillow and saying, I've got a bunch of Bitcoin? What does it actually do? And then what would you do with this as time goes on? Would you sell anything? Would you use it for transactions? And what if it does go to 10 million per coin as far as a strategic reserve? Guy, you had some good points, so take it away on that one.
See if I can continue making good points. See if I can keep the roll going.
I guarantee it.
Nothing's guaranteed in this life, Rob, especially me continuing to make any sense. I think what's probably important in the long run as far as Bitcoin goes is whether or not at some point we achieve some degree of price stability. You mentioned, the fact that, what happens if one BTC equals $10 million. Now, that might sound outlandish, but that could be the case, or even just $1 million. Right. But I think anything in that sort of general region. But like the thing at the moment that means Bitcoin is digital gold, in part because of all the qualities that it has, immutability, a fixed supply, et cetera, but also in part because people think in the long term that it's going to be more valuable, if not tomorrow, then in the future. So as Gresham's law says, people will spend the softer money first, so to speak. So it doesn't make sense for you to spend an asset that you think is going to be worth more in the future. So right. If we get some sort of price stability, let's say, just for the sake of argument, that in 2030, one BTC is $1 million, and it sort of ranges very tightly, from there on in, then I think we could see perhaps it becoming more of a sort of going back to its roots as a sort of digital cash, because at the moment it just doesn't really make sense to spend it. Okay, it's not always the easiest to spend as well. There's things like the Lightning Network and whatever, but really it comes down to the fact that most people think it's going to be worth more in the future than it is today. So why would you spend it? So if we get price stability, then it could go back to being some form of digital cash. I think probably it would be something. I can't really see it being used for day-to-day things. I can't imagine really people going to buy a pint of milk and paying in BTC, even if the whole process is speeded up and the technology becomes even better, which I think will probably happen. But I think we could see it in Bitcoin being something that you use, but serving a bit of a role like gold, but maybe a bit more, a bit easier to spend. Well, obviously it's easier to spend, it's easier to transport, to store, and all that sort of stuff. So maybe used for larger purposes, like maybe you'd buy real estate or a car, or something of a significant value. I can see Bitcoin being used for that. I can also see it being used for international trade for the exact reason that it's actually being used for international trade at the moment. Russia and Iran are both using it, and however you may feel about those countries, it's a proof of concept in the same way that Silk Road was. So I can see it being that, and again because of all the qualities that I mentioned earlier, and I think probably we shouldn't forget as well the original reasons so many people hold Bitcoin, or one of the reasons is it's a hedge against financial instability. It's a hedge against the traditional financial system. It's a hedge against capital controls, central bank digital currencies, government overreach. There's so many reasons to hold on to it. But as digital cash, I just don't see that without real long-term price stability. You could buy some bread rolls with it, sure.
Yeah, I think so. Well, my man, well said. Butter on a roll. So, Ben, the same question for you. If we're having this and we're talking about, what we're going to do with Bitcoin, what do you see it as?
For me, Bitcoin is my savings account. It's my long-term hedge against the future. I don't know what the world is going to look like in 2030. If you listen to some predictions, it's going to be it's going to be really bad. I'm trying to be more optimistic these days, and I think maybe the world will look a lot better in 2030 than it does now. But the point is, I don't know. No one knows anything. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, let alone what's going to happen in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So for me, Bitcoin is the best way that I know of, and the best way that's accessible to me of having some sort of hedge against that future uncertainty. Because, history has shown time and time again, and Ben has said many, many times, all roads eventually lead to money printing. And that leads to currency debasement and the eventual, the continued decline of fiat currencies. And even the dollar, which is the world's arguably strongest currency at the moment. Look at what a dollar will have bought you 10 years ago to what it buys you now. Look at what a dollar would have bought you 50 years ago to what it buys you now. It's terminal decline. And Bitcoin is the best hedge against that I know.
Yeah, again, well said. Ben, same question for you. What do you do with it?
Well, I mean, as I said, I value my portfolio in Satoshis, so it's sort of my unit of account, I guess. Instead of thinking in terms of US dollars, I try to think in terms of Satoshis, especially when it comes to cryptocurrencies. But I often will find myself thinking in terms of Satoshis, even when it's not come to cryptocurrencies, like buying a car or buying a laptop or a desk or anything. It's all about, opportunity cost, right? So for me, I guess it's sort of my unit of account. I think in terms of that, I do occasionally sell Bitcoin if it gets really heated. Like if it goes to really high risk levels and everyone's euphoric, I will occasionally sell some. I tend to always have sort of like a position that I never sell no matter what, because sort of just like the recognition that no matter how much I'm convinced of something, like the market can always go higher, right? It can always go higher. Markets don't need a reason to go up. They need a reason to go down. So that's my general view on Bitcoin. I mean, it's a way to basically improve your life, right? As long as you stick with it over the long term. And a lot of times people join when the market's euphoric and they end up panic selling. And then they're the reasons other people become wealthy. People that buy when the price is low and then sell when the price is high. But yeah, I think Bitcoin has made a lot of people a lot of money over the last decade.
True.
And there are bear markets occasionally, and they're brutal. We just had a brutal one in 2022. We had one in 2018. We had one in 2014. Even the crash in 2020 was crazy. The crash in August 2015 was crazy. We've had some pretty bad crashes, but as long as you stick with it, it seems to be a good way to especially if you want to diversify beyond like stocks and there's the generation before us, right? A lot of it was like the 60-40 portfolio, right? Like 60% stocks, 40% bonds. That portfolio composition hasn't really done that well in a while. It was more so that just being in stocks was the way to go, and it kind of ignoring bonds. But yeah, I think Bitcoin gives you, it's basically like it's sort of like a leveraged version of tech stocks, right? Like when market conditions are good, it does really, really well, right? Like it goes up a lot more than the NASDAQ. It goes up a lot more than the S&P. In fact, if you look at the Bitcoin valuation against the NASDAQ, I think, didn't it already put in a new all-time high? Yeah. Like if you look at Bitcoin's valuation against the NASDAQ, it actually put in new all-time highs just a couple of weeks ago. So I think of it as it basically gives you more exposure. It gives you exposure to more volatile assets, and with something like Bitcoin, it fortunately it tends to go up more than it tends to go down. So that that's allowed people to experience a lot more of that upside. Of course, the downside is when the NASDAQ does roll over, then Bitcoin usually drops 70-80%. But as long as you can weather the storm, you should come out better on the other side. So for me, it's just a unit of account. Like I try to think in terms of Satoshis and not US dollars.
That's a good way to say it. I remember there's a couple of people that actually said to do that exact same thing. Think in Satoshis, and things will make a lot more sense. Because unfortunately for me, I still do the same thing. I still take a look at it as dollars. Like, how much am I making here? What is my cost analysis? What's my cost basis? What am I going to get out of it? And I think it's one of the mistakes I've had. But moving forward, I'm trying to rectify those mistakes. And we'll see how it goes out. So everybody, that will be the majority of it for the show today. We're going to go for the Q&A part. There is one thing, if everybody wants to stop with me later, looks like as far as like healing the markets, Alex Mashinsky is going to be sentenced today from Celsius. And I couldn't tell you, it could not happen to a better person. So there's going to be a live stream going on as he gets sentenced. If you'd like to join me in Celsius Network documentary, there's a link in the description. And hopefully we get some justice here. But if there's anything that you guys want to say to that, you can. If not, we'll just go into Q&A, and I'll look for some questions about that, about anything, actually. Let's go for it. Let's see. It's not a question, but a statement. The more time I spend in the cryptoverse, the more I'm becoming a Bitcoin Marxist or maximalist.
I presume they mean maximalist.
I would think so. I wouldn't say it would straight up communism, because then they would just take your Bitcoin from you. But I mean, have you guys? I mean, Ben, we know your story, but I mean, because like you kind of got shook in the 2017 to 2021 with the altcoins. That's why you're more on the Bitcoin side. But Guy, how about yourself? Have you been more heavy on the Bitcoin this cycle, or still kind of playing it like 50-50?
Still sort of playing it roughly 50-50. Yeah, I can't help myself a lot of the time, because I am, like I say, I am sort of fascinated by altcoins, and I really, really want them to succeed. I really think like it's saddened me over the last couple of years to see so much so much dwindling faith in altcoins. But I think so much of that dwindling of faith is justified. That's the saddening thing. Like, so much of it is bullshit. And it's becoming sort of more and more like we're in this stream panning for gold. And once upon a time, it looked like there was gold everywhere. And now you've really got to look for it. And a lot of the time it's fool's gold, So I think if I'd sort of stayed more, if I'd followed Ben's advice more, I'd be a lot happier man today. But like I don't, in a way I don't care. Like I've learned some tough lessons from altcoins over the last couple of years especially, but I'm still fascinated by them, and I think I'm still looking around for those projects that really are going to change the way that we live on the internet. And I think they're coming. We will get them, but I really hope sooner rather than later.
Yeah, there's a good question here. What do you guys think about the next bear market when the future of Bitcoin is forever? And I think it comes down to, like, as far as like the bear market, like 4-year cycles, or do you think like there's like an extended cycle? So where do you think things are going? Do you still think, or does it all just play out with quantitative easing and quantitative tightening? Anybody can take this one.
I would guess that the next low is going to be probably sometime near the end of 2026. Just sort of going with the, if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? 2014, 2018, 2022, 2026. That's my best guess is as for the next low. So I think the 4-year cycle is intact, but I think it's more so measured from low to low rather than high to high or low to high.
Low to low. Guy, what do you think? Stay on the same path, or do you think there's some different transgressions to go through?
I mean, I'm with Ben on this one, because Ben has been right about Bitcoin so far, and I don't see that changing. The only thing I wonder is that, again, this market is so different than what it was. Bitcoin is such a different asset. Bitcoin has become this whole different thing. I think it's sort of almost closer to something like gold than it is to all these other cryptos. So I wonder that I think could change. I do think the crypto market is so different now that will it always adhere to these 4-year cycles? Because can a market that's matured in that way and that is now so much more mainstream, can it continue to behave like that? It could. But I do catch myself wondering. It's like maybe things have really changed now, and this is going to become a lot harder to read on that 4-year cycle from that 4-year cycle playbook.
Well, that'd be the good long-term play. But how about the short-term play? As far as like a bull trap, 100K resistance level. It seems like as soon as we start to get there, there's always like this sell-off. It's like a psychological barrier. Is that true, or is there we can just blast through? And how's the volume? I'm not big into that. That would be a great question for Aaron from Coin Bureau Trading. But what do you guys see for this one?
I think there could be strength here. The only thing that concerns me a bit about this rally is, what's it based on? It seems to be based on good news around this trade deal. I mean, I know it's just a trade deal with some islands in the North Atlantic, some fairly small and insignificant islands in the North Atlantic. But I think it does show that Trump is making deals, and that maybe this whole tariffs thing is gonna simmer down. So there's that. There's also the fact that I think the China, the People's Bank of China, is starting to stimulate now. So I think there is more liquidity, and global liquidity is generally rising. I think we could see a bit of strength in this. Maybe not quite to an all-time high this time, but yeah, let's see.
Let's see. Ben, everybody's talking you up on the chats. Ben is the most wholesome man in crypto.
I don't think that's true.
He should be president of the United States.
That's quite a stretch. I would say like crypto's.
If you see the way I act on Twitter, I don't know if you'd always sound the most wholesome.
Hey, one more question, and then we'll get out of here. It's a good one. Did you guys start with tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars? I'm in the tens of thousands, because I know, like, when we talk about how if you're doing well, doing poor, I don't think we really do talk about that. But like, where did we all start? Hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars, or tens of thousands of dollars to dump into the market?
I started with hundreds of dollars. I mean, well, hundreds of pounds. Yeah, like when I first started buying Bitcoin in 2014 or whenever it was, when it was around sort of $700, you know, in retrospect, that's very, very cheap. But I was like, damn, you know, I didn't have an awful lot to spend on it, so I just, you know, I allocated when I could. But yeah, I mean, I didn't have much spare cash knocking around then.
Yeah, same here, Ben.
Well, it's not something I would advise, but technically speaking, when I got into crypto, my net worth was negative.
Yeah, weren't you still doing your doctorate in New Mexico?
I was in grad school, and you know, I had a full ride to grad school, so I didn't have student loans, but I had student loans from undergrad still. So yeah, technically speaking, my net worth was negative, but it's not. I mean, I'm not advising that people do that, right?
That's not a good one. But you know what? It does show you one thing. People come in, they start out kind of a gambler, and then as time goes on and they figure out the markets, they become a little bit more conservative. That's all we're saying.
I think it happens to everyone. Yeah, you start off, you know, when you have nothing, you basically, well, I mean, think about it. It makes sense. Like if you have little, it makes sense. It makes more sense to be kind of like all in on something, because like the worst case scenario is you just lose a few $100s, you know? You know, if the more you have, the less it makes sense to be all in, especially on altcoins, because you don't want to spend years and years and years slowly building up your net worth, only then to just go all in on an altcoin and then goes to zero, right? You don't want to have to work for all that again. So I think naturally people become more conservative as time goes on.
Yeah, I got to agree. And I think the people in the chats that are like, no, it's this alt, it's that alt, I think they went a little bit too heavy. That's just my theory.
The funny thing is how people, like, when I see people talk about me now and like they're all full degen and stuff, like it's funny because like they talk about me in a very, oftentimes like a very negative way, but I look at them and I'm like, gosh, like that was me. Like I was that person like 9-10 years ago, like the one that was like, no, you know, why buy Bitcoin? Just go buy this altcoin. Like it's gonna do much better. So like I have to watch myself because like I was them, and it was the market teaching me the ways of how things work to then kind of become where I am now. So I think it's always an important reminder for people to sort of remind themselves that of you, even that people, like everyone gets wrecked in crypto at some point. And you kind of, after you've been wrecked so many times, you start to try to tailor your strategy so that when you do get wrecked, you get wrecked less.
That's a t-shirt waiting to happen.
No matter what, you will get wrecked in crypto if you're in it long enough. But
that is true.
The question I want to know is how many people started with hundreds of thousands of dollars and are now down to just hundreds.
That's a good one. That's it. It's like the old joke for a VC. How do you become a millionaire doing venture capitalism? It's you start out with $1 billion, and then that's pretty much how it goes. Anyhow, all right, everybody. So again, just to recap, it's not like we're saying that all alts are bad. It's just that you got to be very choosy. We're not talking about your alts. Your alts are awesome. You're awesome. You're going to be a winner. And that's it.
Then are you working on have you got a t-shirt coming out saying I'm not talking about your alts?
The only altcoin t-shirt that I have is the one that says sufficiently wrecked, where the E is the Ethereum logo. Because I released that when Ethereum like went home, right? When it went to the regression again or whatever. That's the only altcoin t-shirt that I have, really.
I think you need to get I'm not talking about your altcoin.
Yeah.
Ben chooses violence as we leave the NFA.
Well, the funny thing is if I release that shirt, by the time I would release that shirt, it would probably be time for alt season.
What are you waiting for? Do it.
Do it, man.
We need it.
I want to pick one up at the ITC party in Vegas.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. So that's it for today. We got to get out of here early. So everybody, again, follow these two gentlemen. They got some really good information. And I don't know if you haven't followed them, that'd be kind of weird. That's it for today, everybody. Thanks so much for stopping by, and we'll see you on the next show, which will be, guys. Thanks, everybody. Adios.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks.